We will always use our tools and privilege to tell pertinent stories around technologies and how it all will influence our futures. ScanLAB was founded by Matt and I in 2010, just after we finished our architectural studies.
Our artworks manifest as highly crafted digital and physical pieces that explore ideas of memory, they explore what it's like to exist in the world now, and they explore the future of technology and how it influences us, our lives, our society.
And we're really drawn to making work where people and places interact, whether that's in landscapes or in architecture. That threshold between those two is a really beautiful and really exciting place to make work.
So as a studio, we have a very unique aesthetic. We explore the world through what we call a point cloud. These are millions, billions of precisely measured points in space. We've fallen in love with this aesthetic. It's both photographic and spatial. It can really transport you back to a real world place, but it's also malleable in this kind of digital dust-like way.
For us, it's a tool to show you something you might be familiar with, but from a very different angle.
We've been fortunate enough to exhibit our artworks at amazing institutions such as LACMA, the Barbican, Royal Academy, Venice Biennale.
We see our artwork as part of the evolution of photography. It's connected so deeply to portraiture and the way people and places are recorded and shared around the world.
We like to bring those portraits back to life in a very kind of spatial way. Up until 2016, 2017, our work had been documenting people and places as these frozen moments in time. And we really wanted to add the element of time passing into our works. So we developed the Framerate series, which ultimately requires us to scan the same place again and again and again. That adds in this element of time to our work. Sometimes that time is just the passing of an evening in the pub, but sometimes it's an entire year out in the landscape.
Framerate Desert Pulse brings our technique here to Phoenix and to Arizona.
The project looks to hold multiple truths at one time. It celebrates and explores the way that the people and the flora of the Sonoran Desert have adapted and had to be so resilient to exist in this environment. But it also turns a thoughtful gaze on the city of Phoenix, one of America's fastest growing, one of America's hottest cities. It really questions how sustainable it is for us to keep on growing as a species in the way that we currently are.
The Garden's been curating art exhibitions since 2002. Each year we have a major exhibition. We've worked with June Kaneko, Bruce Monroe, Dale Chihuly. This is our first exhibition, though, that we commissioned. It's also the first exhibition we've done a collaboration between our science team and our creative team with the artists. So this is very special.
There's three types of recording process that manifest inside Desert Pulse. The first is going out scanning every single day over the course of an entire year at a series of locations in and around Phoenix. We also study some sites at a much faster pace, so we document them over a 24-hour period, scanning every 5 or 10 minutes for up to 24 hours. And then finally, back in our studio in London, we built robotically controlled photogrammetry rigs that observe the delicate unfurling of petals and the flowering of single cacti.
So we worked with 5 local professional photographers based in Arizona and trained them up in our 3D LiDAR scanning technique. They went out every single day, come rain or shine, across an entire year to these different landscapes.
You have to have had some experiences that make you a little bit different to want to just be out in the middle of the desert as often as we are.
A typical day in the field involves getting up sometimes 4 a.m., 5 a.m. to beat the heat. Usually it involves coming here to the garden, getting the Rivian, our electric truck, loaded up with all of our equipment.
And then we head out to the first scan. The sun is just rising. Arizona has some of the most beautiful sunrises, just being able to see all the color in the sky. So it's just a really nice, peaceful drive. We go into our first scan spot.
Then you load up everything on your back. It's about 70 pounds of gear, and you hike a ways to where the tripod stakes are.
There's some metal stakes that go into the ground to get a very small but very precise tripod foot position. So that gets us to within kind of that sort of level of accuracy every day, and then the guys have a little manual set of tweaking that they can do.
We use a LiDAR scanner that creates a 3D model with a radius of 350 meters. So we get a very large area mapped in rather high detail.
So basically what's happening is like the laser is coming out through here. So the mirror is spinning and directing the laser around.
We take the scanner off its tripod, place a camera in the same exact spot, and take a full HDRR panorama, and we map that color afterwards in the studio onto the scans.
The laser doesn't see color. So the laser just sees space, and it also sees different surfaces on an infrared spectrum. So it's kind of like our version of black and white photography, I guess, before color was invented. We shoot a color pass on a more traditional camera, and then we've got this kind of special way of mapping the color information onto the locations as well. So we'll have this choice later on as to whether we show things in color. And that's all about the storytelling, really, like what is the most important change here? Sometimes it will be color, right? When there's plants involved, almost certainly it's going to be color. But when it's just the physicality of that construction site, it might actually be more potent in black and white than it is in color.
The hardest thing is the heat. It is beyond brutal.
Lately, there have been spots that we've sat in and the vehicle temperature, little thermometer that tells you what the ambient temperature is, has gone up to, I think the highest I've seen so far is 124.
There's days where I'm hiking, 6-7 miles, and I'm like, I didn't even realize I was doing all this, but I completely understand why I'm so tired now.
I think being in the same place over and over and over again does something for how much I've felt that I'm paying attention to the landscape around me.
This job is very meditative. And so you can kind of get in that zone while you're out here.
The landscapes that are chosen to be part of Framerate Desert Pulse are very specifically picked, either to exemplify landscape scale change that's driven by the forces of nature, or they're locations where humans are very directly the cause of the landscape scale shift. So for example, we've been scanning the Trilogy development site on the edge of the Tonto National Forest, where 1,385 new homes have been built on what was virgin desert. Following watercourses has been a major driver in picking a lot of our locations as well. So some of the locations appear along the banks of either the Rio Verde or the Salt River. Their rate of flow is not natural at all. It's entirely controlled by humans. Another of our sites, the Diamond Fire. This is a human-caused fire, and fire is not a naturally occurring process in the desert. So we've been scanning that location as it recovers and regenerates from burnt, black, charred soil through some really kind of positive green growth. We've scanned locations which exemplify the joy and the amazingness of us coming together as a species. So we've celebrated the success of the Diamondbacks in their stadium in the city centre. We've scanned restaurants where families are coming together, enjoying time together over a meal. We see an enormous irrigation arm watering a field of alfalfa. We then see that alfalfa harvested. So at one of our locations, the scientists from Desert Botanical Garden have been observing the growth of saguaros for over 10 years now.
Saguaros in the Sonoran Desert are absolutely iconic. They're what people think about when they think about the desert Southwest in the United States. They are beautifully adapted for hot temperatures, for dry conditions, but every living thing has its limits.
Some of what was happening, and I had never seen it before, is that these large saguaros would just drop arms.
I've seen a lot of dropped arms out, actually. Is that yeah, really a lot, and it looks recent.
It's so sad, but I mean, basically, it's an indication of a saguaro under like serious stress, severe stress, because that is not a normal phenomenon.
They start to lose their ability literally to breathe and to make their own food. The environmental conditions are changing, and it's not just looking from decade to decade, it's literally looking from year to year.
I mean, the way that we've been seeing things, surprised that this is still standing year from now.
We've been scanning this incredible landfill site where 3 generations ago, a family actually started quarrying for gravel. That gravel went to make some of the concrete that built iconic structures within the city of Phoenix. And now, generations later, those structures are being demolished, updated, and the waste products of that demolition is actually going back into the same hole as a landfill site.
I've got to see them pour the concrete into the field, but there's life growing up through the concrete that's poured out. It's given this story about how resilient nature really is.
It's one of the most important, but also one of the most risky moments to choose one of these locations for Desert Pulse. We do an enormous amount of research trying to understand and trying to hypothesize how that landscape will shift over time. You know, will that saguaro grow? Will these wildflowers come into bloom? How will the river run through this place? What will it be like if it rains? There's also a whole bunch of, external, uncontrollable factors.
The fallen saguaro, for me, is a really sad moment. I think it holds such an iconic takeaway from what's happening here.
In a way, it's emblematic of something that the scientists here at the Botanical Garden have been telling us, that these summer months, when those temperatures are staying consistently high, that's creating conditions that even the saguaro can't survive.
This is unprecedented for those of us who have been in the Sonoran Desert for a long time to see this happening. Literally, many scientists saying, I've never seen this happen. What is going on?
And that's terrifying to me. That's hopefully a wake-up call for us all.
Out in the desert, the team are looking at the landscape scale, really enormous changes that we're seeing over the course of the year. And we wanted to contrast that with what happens down at that macro level. This is ScanBot, our innovation to record and show people what happens to cacti as they bloom. What we do is take the plants in when they're just in bud. We've been working with Authorship Nursery, so they are able to kind of send us little WhatsApp messages like this one's coming into bloom, probably 2 or 3 days from opening. So we rush down there, pick up the plants, bring them back to our lab. There's about 200 photos to go into making that 3D model. And then we take those 200 photos again every 15 minutes. And we repeat that process day and night, 24 hours. So I'm glad we've got a robot to do that for us. It's normally about a 2-week process from start to finish. It's so lovely to be able to take people on a bit of an arc rather than just always focus on the bad things that might be happening. There is so much resilience, there's so much joy, there's so many magic moments there. We all know plants flower, but the sort of rhythm and sequencing and the grace by which they do it is absolutely phenomenal.
So we end up with hundreds of terabytes of data. All of these scans taken from the exact same moment in space. In studio, we align those scans together, and we're left with this incredible 3-dimensional model, which has also got the element of time baked into it. This is really where the second moment of authorship takes place in the work. when we can really explore these scans, when we can really find the moments of change that are happening inside these landscapes.
Because imagine that you're going to be, you're looking through that texture at the saguaro and then boom, it's just gone in your black background.
Totally, and it would be really lovely to see this from the other side with the desert in the background.
Could be quite interesting also a perspective from above, so you can see the difference from the desert and the built.
This is where we create the visuals that make the final artwork.
These films represent long stretches of time, which are then time-lapsed. So we see them in a relatively short space of time. So the question becomes, what does sound do in that environment? In the way that they scanned the real world and got real data, I wanted real sound in there, even down to recordings of the bioelectricity of the cacti, and then translate that into music. There's a real world that's been scanned, and what the result of that is this incredibly rich sort of data set. But at the same time, it has an alien look. There's something other about it. So I wanted the sound to have elements of reality, but also then be twisted and turned and chopped up in the way that the visuals are sometimes. In order for those real sounds to match that slightly unreal imagery, there are lots of techniques to affect them, whether that's putting them into reverb or chopping them up or changing their pitch so that they start to occupy that funny space that's between real and unreal that the visuals are also occupying.
The installations are designed to be placed in conversation with the garden. So as you come in through the entrance to the Desert Botanical Garden, you're met at the Otterson Entry Garden. And there you come across our first piece. Now it's nestled beautifully amongst the prickly pears. And we've scanned from that exact same spot every day for a year. So not only do you get to see that location through your eyes, but you get to see it through ours across that entire year, which is really beautiful.
Then we move on to Elswen at the Lewis Desert Portal. Now, Elswen is really about taking us beyond the garden, way out into the desert to look at a whole variety of vast landscapes over different periods of time.
Calyx is a really lovely opportunity to see a fleeting moment that not all of us get to see with cacti. There's still beautiful, almost stoic desert comes alive for this very short period of time. And what's lovely is that we can show you that on repeat as a moment of choreography and of dance and of flutter. Horizon, it's a big monolithic moment, talking very deeply about the marks that both nature and humans make across the landscape.
The whole exhibition culminates in what we call Desert Pulse. Audiences enter what is essentially a black void, the contemporary gallery space, and they're surrounded by these striking visuals that are kind of hovering in space, above, below, and all around them. And we really got the opportunity here to play with audiences' emotions and senses.
We hope audiences will leave with a renewed sense of awe and wonder for this part of the world, with a new respect for the incredible species that are adapting and thriving in this desert landscape.
I've been really humbled by observing how the desert behaves, how its rhythms play out. And I really hope our audiences are able to take away some of that.
We also hope in Desert Pulse that people actually find a bit of a cautionary tale. Because not over millennia, but over just a few decades, we as a species are catastrophically changing the planet. And that might have implications for all of us and for this region as well. We all have an impact, and we hope Framerate helps people hold that impact, understand that impact, and be able to deal with that impact. We have to be honest about the impact of us as a UK studio coming to this part of the world to make this piece of work. We're measuring probably somewhere around 140 tons of CO2 that have been directly emitted as a result of making this piece. At ScanLAB, sustainable production is crucial to the way that we think about everything that we do. And so what you'll find in the making of space at Desert Pulse is a very clear and honest description of every emission that this project has caused. But you'll also hear in there some of the tricky and some of the easy decisions that we've been able to take to limit those emissions.
All of the data that we've recorded is essentially going to be left in Phoenix for scientific research and also the wider local community. We found that on previous iterations on Framerate, the data has been invaluable for local scientists, and we really believe that this is only the beginning for our research and findings on this project too.
We are all so excited about the data that has been collected and that we will have access to. It's going to give us a whole new and much more refined way to look at how these plants are growing and responding.
So for us, the Framerate series doesn't end here with Desert Pulse. From its outset, this has always been a growing body of both artworks and data, and we're really excited to keep taking that technique around the world.
You know, I have a renewed drive that art and technology has a role in expanding our understanding of this moment of history to highlight the environmental inheritance that we leave our children.
Working with these tools that are really at the edge of development, you know, that's a responsibility that we hold dear in the studio. And we want to use our position and our privilege to tell these pertinent stories around the world about how those technologies will unfold and impact on our future.